Okay, welcome back to Java programming. Today we're going to talk about the scanner class, and you're going to have some fun with this. Let's go over what we've done so far and what we're going to do today. So far, we've been able to just display data to the screen. That's all we've done. We learned about variables, strings of type string and type integer, and we learned how to use the system.out.println command. And we also learned the structure of a basic Java program. But today we're going to learn how to write a program that will accept input or data from the keyboard and then be able to display that back to the user. To do this, we will use the scanner class. But before we could get into that, let's have a little discussion on classes and objects. And this is coming from chapter 1, the document that's on the in the course materials list, so make sure you refer to that. Okay, so the two most important concepts in object-oriented programming are the class and the object. An object is a thing. It can be tangible or intangible. And objects are used to, create data, to manipulate data. An object is also called an instance of a class. Okay, so what is a class? A class is a definition to create an object. And I know that kind of sounds like I'm just running around, but we'll get into that. So a class is a template that indicates what an object can or cannot do, what it's composed of. So if we were to write a program to track student residence at a college, we would have many objects. We would have a student object, we have a room object, and we would have a floor object. So all of these would be objects within the program. Um, so let's talk about the student object. The student object will be composed of data such as name, gender, birth date, home address, age, phone number, and the operations for assigning and changing the data, these data values. So if I were to write a program and I were going to keep track of many students, I would need a container or an object for each student. And so that object would define what that student is composed of. Okay. I can have different types of student objects. I can have a off-campus student object. I can have a virtual student object, and they would have different things inside of it, okay, that would make up that student object. So to create the object, student object, I would need to create a student class definition or use one, okay? So to access the student class, we would use an import statement, packages and classes. And this is an example of an import statement, okay, to access whatever class you want to use. And that should be a semicolon there, I'm sorry. So it would follow the form import java.util and whatever the class name is. Okay, so the red part of this statement are called packages. And inside the packages, you would find the classes. Okay, so I want you to think of these packages just like folders on the computer directory. Like you may have your My Documents folder, and inside the My Documents folder, you might have a folder for this class, programming, and inside that folder, you would have files like Program 1, Program 2. So this is just like that. This is giving you kind of what's called a fully qualified name to where that file is located. Okay? All right, so to get data from the screen, I must create an object of the class scanner. Okay, so to do that, we would use this phrase here, scanner, which is the class. Scan is going to be the name of the object I'm going to create. Okay, and here is where we just implement it. So new scanner system.in. Okay, so we're telling it we want to access scanner, we want to create an object of the scanner class called scan, and this is just telling the computer to go ahead and implement it. Okay, so here it is. Scan is the object. It is the instance of the scanner class. So this should be called the instance of the scanner class. We can have multiple objects in one program of the same class scanner. So here I have name. This would be an object of the scanner class, and then student. This would be another object. So I can have all of these existing in the same program. Okay. All right. So we just talked about this part here as review. So to access the scanner class, the following statement needs to be added to our program. Okay. So what we're going to do, we're going to look at the program that we used the other day, the hello program, and we're going to go ahead and implement or use the command scanner, scan equals new scanner, system in, and again, this could be any name that you want it to be. For our purpose here, I'm just calling it scan, but it could be anything. And then we have our statement here, system.out print line, where we're asking the user, we're prompting the user to input his or her name. The next command here is string name. Here we are going to have to create a variable to hold the input from the keyboard. Okay, so this line right here tells the computer to wait for the user to input his or her name, where it says scan.next. So whatever you type next will be assigned to the variable, will be assigned to the variable name. So we have here string name equals next scan.next. Okay, so again, this is just assigning the value, whatever's being typed into the keyboard, to the variable name. And then here we just type or print to the screen system.out.println print line name. And so these are the modifications or adjustments that we're going to make to the program today as a part of our lecture. Now let's say I wanted to go ahead and get a number as opposed to a string or characters. I would just simply change that line here. I would use integer again because I'm using numbers. I could use the variable age, and then instead of just having the word next, I would have next int, just like this, and we need to make sure we use a capital I. And this again needs to be a semicolon. If we use a lowercase I, we would get an error when we try to compile the program. Okay, one thing here, I just need to make sure you saw this. Here we did use the import statement, import java.util.scanner to be able to do this. Without that, we would get an error. So let's just look at the program as it was before. I want you to notice here that we did not use an import statement because we were just doing some simple commands here, just printing to the screen. But if I want to do some more complex things, I would need to make sure I know what class to import so that I could do that. And so here, the scanner class allows us to be able to interact with the keyboard. So it has a definition there that tells the computer how to access data from the keyboard. Okay? Okay, so I am in the editor, and let's go ahead and look at this program again. As you can see, there are no import statements here, so this is a very simple program. What we need to do next, we need to go ahead and create some commands. But first, let's go ahead and use the import statement here. All right, so import java.util.scanner. Okay. Now, the next thing I want to do, I want to go ahead and create my scanner object, create an instance of the class scanner. Scanner, scan equals new scanner. System dot in. All right. Now let's go ahead and define a variable here of type string because we want to go ahead and get the user's name after we prompt him or her to do that name. Okay. So let's go ahead and change this from hello world, and I'm going to type in there, enter your name. Okay, so we've done that to this point. Alright, so the next thing we want to do is go ahead and assign the value that's placed or typed into the keyboard to the variable name. To do this, we go ahead and use the object scan. Then we use the word next. And that's it. So that line 10, is going to tell the computer after it prints this to the screen, it's going to wait. It won't do anything until the user types in his or her first name and then presses the enter key, and it will continue with the program. Now we want to go ahead and print the individual's name to the screen. And we can do this by making it a little friendly. Hello. Remember, I'm going to use the concatenation operator. Use the variable name. And there we have it. Okay, so everything looks in order. Now, one thing I did not do, I did not use comments. So we want to make sure that we do that. Alright, so okay, here are the variables. So we're going to create the scanner object and declare variable. Here we're going to prompt the user to input his or her name. Alright, and on the next line, here we're going to get username, and then here we're going to display username. Alright, so let's go ahead and compile this. Okay, and we do have an error, so let's see what's going on with the error. Okay. And I spelled the command wrong here, so that's something you need to make sure you do. Be careful with that. You will get errors, and it told me exactly where the error was and how to fix it. Okay, so let's go ahead and compile this again. Okay, so to compile, we have no errors. I'm going to go ahead and run the program, input my name. Now make sure when you do this, you click here so that focus will be drawn there. And I'm going to type my name. And there it is. Hello, Robert. Okay, so I want you to notice something here. I typed Robert space Henley, and I didn't tell the compiler to go ahead and take my first and last name. There's some things we can do to fix that. One thing we want to do, we can go ahead and change this to say first name. Now, when we are creating variables with two names, we are using what's called camel case. The first letter is lowercase, then every other word in the variable begins with a capital letter. Okay, so that's my variable for the first name. I'm going to go ahead and type a variable for the last name. Okay, so here I need to change this to enter your first name. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and change this to first name. If I don't do that, I will get an error because it's not recognizing just a variable name. I changed it to first name. And then I'm going to go ahead and type this system.out.print line. Enter your last name. All right, and then we go ahead and type last name equals scan.next. And then I can go ahead here and type hello, first name plus last name. Okay, so let's go ahead and compile that and see if it works. Okay, it's compiled. There are no errors there. So the next thing I want to do is run it. Okay, I'm getting some issues with this. Let me go ahead and switch this over here so you can see it. Okay, here we are. Enter your first name. Remember, I got to click here, place focus there. Robert. Enter your last name. Henley. There it is. Hello, Robert Henley. Now, I want you to notice something here. There is no space there between my first and last name. So it's correct. It did what the computer asked it to do, or the program asked it to do. However, that is not proper grammar, so we need to fix that. So how about we fix this? So we need to go ahead and add a space, and this is how we're going to add a space. And I need you to notice how many concatenation operators we're using here. So let's go ahead and compile that. There are no errors. I'm going to run it. Enter my first name. Enter my last name. There it is. Hello, Robert Henley. There are no spaces. Now, what if I wanted to ask the user for his or her age? Okay. What I would need to do then, I need to go back up here and make some adjustments to my variables. Remember, we're using numbers of type int. So I'm going to go ahead and let's make sure that this is spaced properly. Int age, so I'm declaring a variable of type age there. All right, and let's go up here right before we display that information. System.out.print ln, how old are you? Okay, so that's what we're typing there. And how do we go ahead and get the user input? That's right, we're going to go ahead and type the variable here, age equals scan.next. Okay, let's compile this. And as I compile it, I'm going to get an error. And that's because I'm using a variable here of type int. Remember, in our discussion, we talked about when we're using numbers or integers, I need to change the way this looks. So let me go ahead and use int there. Remember to use capital I. All right, I'm going to go ahead and compile that, and I should get no errors. But before we do this, let's go ahead and before we run it, let's make some additions here. System.out.print. And I'm going to add some humor here. Boy, you are old at. And I'm going to go ahead and put the age there. Okay. All right, so let's compile that. Go ahead and run it. Enter your first name. Enter your last name. Enter your age. Boy, you are old at 45. Okay. Now, what if I wanted to add 20 to this age? Let's say I wanted to change it so that it will say in 20 years you will be there we are. So it says there in 20 years you will be, and I take the age 20, I add 20 to it, years old. Okay, so let's go ahead and compile that. Okay, we have an error there, and let's see what the error is saying. I left out a closing parentheses there. All right, let's go ahead and compile this. Okay, it compiled without any errors. Let's go ahead and run it. Enter my first name, last name, age 35. In 20 years, you will be 55 years old. So let's go back up here and talk about this. Because here I have a plus sign, a plus sign, and a plus sign. Notice here, it didn't just concatenate it. It went ahead and performed the operations there. So the compiler can tell, and let's say if I didn't use those parentheses there, let's see what would happen. Okay. Okay, so you see here, it went ahead and concatenated these numbers here. See that? So in 20 years, you will be 4020. That's not what we wanted. So to tell the computer that I want to actually add these numbers, we go ahead and use the parentheses here. Okay, so let's go ahead and compile this again. Let's execute it. Let's run the program. Okay, 10. There we are. So you see here, it actually added the numbers together. Okay, so this is pretty cool. This gives you a way to actually create some programs that interact with users from the keyboard. And as usual, you are to submit this program to me. Make sure that you go ahead and have typed this as I have written along. Make sure you include your comments here. Get users age there. Get users last name. first name. So make sure you do that, okay? I will take off points if you don't have comments included throughout your program. So I hope that was interesting and fun, and I hope you understand how to use classes and what they are, how to import them, how to access them, how to declare them, create an object, and make sure you get that to me. Have a good day. Make sure you submit your other work. All right, and I need you to also make sure you look at the program 2 assignment. Bye.